a very cool organization. The Association of Students in Commerce and Economics. And that group managed an exchange program for students, mostly students graduating. So for every student that graduated that you got a job for in your hometown or city, you got to send someone from your group to another place in the world. It was a global organization. And I was fortunate enough to be given a job in Japan. And so I left university and went to Japan. I said I'd go anywhere in the world practically, I think. And Japan was the country I got, so it was the luck of the draw. And I worked there. That was my first stop in Asia. I worked there in a tennis resort. It's supposed to be a management job, but management training in Japan is slightly different than other parts of the world. And I ended up washing dishes for 2 months and decided after a while that this perhaps wasn't the same sort of management training that I was anticipating after 4 years or more of university. So from there I came to Bangkok and got into market research, and then my husband-to-be was transferred to Singapore, and that was my first step into Singapore, which was in 1991. And I loved Thailand. I loved Japan. I certainly loved Singapore, and was not happy to leave when we did. We had to get transferred to Canada. And it was in Canada that I met my partners who were in the subway business. So when I was in university in Canada, Subway was just starting on the eastern coast. I'd never heard of it. And when I moved to Calgary, the people that I became partners with owned several Subways, and they didn't think Subway could grow much further in Canada at the time. There's probably, I don't know, maybe 300 stores in the whole of Canada, and now there's, I think, 1,500 or so. So it's quite ironic that they didn't think it could grow that much. And they knew that I lived in Singapore and asked if I thought I could set it up here. And at the time, Singapore only had 1 or 2 sandwich shops. One was in Tanglin Shopping Center where the carpets are.
The Oriental?
Anyway, the Far East, it's a shopping center at the top of Orchard Road. There was a good sandwich shop there, and one other one. It was quite not very many. So when I got to Singapore, a lot of people thought I was a bit crazy, and they certainly had never heard of Subway, because there were less than 10,000 stores back then in the world, and 95% of them were in the U.S., so it hadn't really expanded globally. And the reason I thought, I didn't know Subway very well, but looking into the business, I could see it was a very simple business. From a franchising perspective, it was one that wasn't that expensive to get into compared to the other franchises at the time, like some of our competitors, where it cost millions of dollars to enter the business. Subway at the time was about $200,000, so it's a fraction of the cost. So the potential from that perspective was quite big.
And that was back in 1990s.
That was 95 that we were researching whether or not we should get into the Singapore market. And I'd also seen in my time in Asia already, I'd already seen enough changes where the pizza business, for example, had started to take off. And people used to say pizza would never take off because it had cheese on it, and Asians don't eat cheese. It's like, honest to goodness, that's what they said. And people told me they wouldn't eat sandwiches because Asians don't eat bread.
But there was McDonald's at that time.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. They're like, well, that's different. So it was sort of funny. So that basically the idea was to come and get the brand established in Singapore, and I had a lot of respect for what had already been done. And so we came to Singapore. The whole health side was also good, but it wasn't a driving factor at the time. Subway wasn't super well known as being the healthy company it was at that point. Jared hadn't joined until about almost 2000 that he came on, maybe 98. So it was just before the whole health kick started to really take off. But the other side of it, the fact that the sandwiches are made in front of you fresh, which is important in Asia, and especially in Singapore, a good choice, and the vegetables I knew would be well accepted. And then for anybody who liked sandwiches, there weren't a very big option. By the time we actually opened, there was Fiddleheads had, I think, maybe 4 or 5 stores open, and they were probably our biggest competitor at the time.
Oh, okay.
They eventually closed. They had nice sandwiches. I always believe that anybody who makes a good product will survive, but sometimes the economics don't work. So yeah, we started with our first store. We had actually 2 stores open the same week, practically. My store, which was at Lau Pa Sat, and they just reopened Lau Pa Sat. And I had remembered Lau Pa Sat as more upscale, but when it got renovated, it was not quite as upscale as it was suggested it was going to be. And then the other one is at Orchard Road, which is still open, and by Muddy Murphy's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the oldest store in Singapore. It's still operating.
The oldest right now, Muddy Murphy's. What's that? Oh, is it over close to the Orchard Hotel? Is?
It's in the Orchard Hotel.
Oh,
in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah. So we opened in December of '96 to a huge line of customers. It was massive. But the business was good. There's a lot of customers, but the economics were not good. The rent was very high, and I couldn't manage to get enough people through the line fast enough to cover the business. So eventually we had to close that store, and it's the only store. Oh no, we've relocated, but I had to close it.
Is that over the one at Lau Pa Sat?
Yeah.
Oh, the rents are high. And how high were the rents at that time?
In 1996, it was $10,000 a month, which even today is a pretty high rent. Though a lot of our stores can cover that quite easily now. So we closed it. We moved it to another location, and that store number is still operating. Somebody bought the equipment in the store, and so it's still alive in the system, which makes me happy. And the other thing that happened was the 1998 financial crash, which was devastating, because our system works on getting as many stores opened as quickly as possible, because then all of your supply chain improves. You build your marketing improves, and you build a distribution system for people to get into your stores. But with the financial crisis, trying to sell a franchise was almost impossible. It was partly the financial crisis and partly the lack of understanding of franchising in Asia and Singapore at the time. It was a relatively new thing, and it was still seen almost as a pyramid scheme, because there had just been quite a few pyramid schemes that had caused quite a few problems. So it wasn't seen as completely above board. So it took a few years to sell another store and get the system starting to move. which it did in about 1999. We got a few more stores open, of which are still open, which is still very cool. So that's how it started, and then it just, once it starts, it takes off.
So you mentioned that in 1999, that's where the domino exchange begins. One effect to another, and all that. And that's almost about 1 year after the financial crisis. And what was the key factor that create that domino effect? Is it because of the confidence level after the financial crisis, or was it partly your talent in able to market the idea of franchising?
I don't think it was my talent. I think it was more partly the more confidence because of the financial crisis being over, sort of. A better understanding of franchising, but also more importantly, by then we had, I think it was only 3 or 4 stores, but they were open, they were operating, and we had profitable franchisees. And that makes a difference, because when we sell the business, we can't, if you wanted to buy a Subway store today, I couldn't say this is how much money you're going to make. You have to go and talk to our franchisees, and they have to tell you how they're doing. And it makes it very difficult to start that. But we had a few franchisees who were doing well enough to feel confident to tell other people that there was opportunity in this business. And that's really how it starts tipping the scale. Once you get to 10 stores, then it's even easier. Those first 10 stores are the most challenging.
What was the key success of the franchisees on their part? Was it marketing on their part, or was it a collaboration with your expertise?
At that point, the key success was they operated their stores really well according to the system. The Subway system is very simple, and if you follow it, you're likely to make money out of it. Our marketing still, with so few stores, didn't have a lot of money. So we couldn't really do anything dramatic to pull people in. The marketing that was effective was more the local store marketing, telling the people in their immediate neighborhood how things went, and building up that network within the 5 minutes of their store, which is really the catchment.
So it's more like word of mouth in that sense.
Word of mouth, and that they sent out flyers and what we call bag stuffers, things to bring people back. They did a lot of their own, where it's possible to get posters near their stores, directional signage, that sort of thing, so that people knew that they were there. And they also did, in some of the locations, a fair amount of catering, because that's a way of getting people to try the product. Generally, it's very seldom that somebody goes to Subway, tastes Subway, and doesn't like it. Most of the time, they go to Subway, taste it, and think it's great. And once they taste it, then they'll go back again. But in a new market, it's getting them to taste it is the challenge.
But didn't they promote the product as a health product as well?
They started to, actually, there's some sensitivity on how we use the word health. Because of the supply chain, we can only do what we call 7 under 6. At the time, it was 7 sandwiches with 6 grams of fat and 350 calories or less. And in order to be able to make that claim, we had to have a supply chain that was consistent. And until, I don't remember the year, probably about 2000, our supply chain was still erratic enough that we couldn't say that every time we had roast beef, it was from the same supplier with the same fat content and the same nutritional ingredients. So until then, we could only say it's good for you, the fresh vegetables, that side of things, but we couldn't actually say it's healthy. And we're still reluctant. We claim we're healthy because we are in some of our products, but we also have to recognize that we have some indulgent products that you don't want to eat too many of. Although they taste great, they're just not very good for your waistline.
Okay. So is your leadership skill genetic, or is leadership skill that has to be groomed in many ways? What is the key of your success?
I think it's a bit of both. I wouldn't say it's genetic. I would say it's more. I think your family and your heritage has a lot to do with it, because you see how your parents worked and behaved, and what your grandparents did, and where they went in their lives. And as a result of that, you can see what you can do. But that's one side, and then the other side is just being thrown into the deep end and having to figure out how to swim. And some people can figure it out, and some people can't. So I think it's a mixture of the both. I was fortunate enough to be given this opportunity, and to take the opportunity. And it meant, saying goodbye to a fairly good job for my husband at the time, and moving a whole family to Singapore and starting a brand new business from zero, which is always a bit scary, even though I'd been here before. But I was able to take advantage of that and move it forward despite the challenges of the time. But I think that's also the result of being able to do that, was because I'd seen my father grow from what he was, and my grandparents grow from what they were. And without that background, it would be hard to know that you can do it as well.
And to add to that, though, you have explained to us that it was actually due to the family support and the influence that got you where you are today, and plus other factors that surround you. In regards to the setting up of the new business of Subway here in Singapore and Asia, what kind of major challenges do you face? Was there a cultural challenge for you when you set up this business? And was it the cuisine and the language that gives you a lot of unnerving issues, as well as for your children? Could you elaborate?
Culturally, I never. The only place that I had a cultural barrier really was with the contractors, because I knew more about putting up wallpaper than they knew, and they couldn't believe that. So I ended up doing it myself. With the people that I worked with, has never been a barrier. I think part of it is just because I've grown up in a multicultural society. I've lived abroad in various countries, and that helps a lot to understand that. And having moved from Japan to Thailand to Singapore, being exposed a fair amount, so that side of things wasn't that hard. The food side, we have a good product, and so in Singapore in particular, if you have something that tastes good, it will sell. There's no question about it, and that side makes it easy. It's just getting, for us, the thing was getting people to understand that eating a sandwich is a meal. They didn't need rice on the side, and they didn't need noodles on the side, and it's still something that we face in other markets today, that a sandwich is it's got everything you need to make you sufficient for the next 4 or 5 hours, depending on how big of a sandwich you have.
So what's next for you right now? I mean, now Subway has grown one of the largest chains in Asia, and as well as in the world, because it has already beaten McDonald's strength in terms of size. Associated Press had declared a few days ago that that Subway is now one of the largest leading fast food chains in the world, and even in America as well. And I'd like to compliment that the organization. But what's next, for Subway right now? Are you moving towards into CSR as well as philanthropy?
I just want to clarify a little bit. In Asia, we're still not number one. We're not close to number one yet. We've just reached our 1,000 store mark for Asia, which is very exciting for us. We've reached 200 stores, which is like a month of wins. 200 stores in India, 200 stores in China, and 200 stores in Japan and 200 stores in Southeast Asia, all in like 1 month. We just hit boom, boom, boom. It's quite cool. For Asia, we haven't even sort of touched the edge of the opportunities yet. And when I talk about opportunities, I really like to talk about opportunities for our franchisees, because that's our business. If our franchisees win, then everything else wins. But if they don't succeed, then it's not good for us. And in some of our markets, our franchisees are doing fantastically, but I still believe there's a lot more room for them to do even better. And that would be a place like Singapore, even Malaysia. A country like India, our franchisees are doing very well, but there's still, each store has room to grow, let alone each franchisee being able to expand their own business. And China, where our franchisees are profitable, they need to be more profitable in order to start to grow their businesses and build more stores. So for me, the next step in most of Asia is to make sure that each franchisee is profitable enough that they can expand their business to the size that they would like it to be. And of course, in that process, then we grow the number of stores. So our next goal is 2,500 stores for Asia. And I think that's quite an achievable goal.
And so how long do you think that will take to achieve 2,500 stores in Asia?
We should reach it, for once I'm going to be conservative, and we should reach it by 2015. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if we reached it before that.
Do you think, and also partly social networks and internet has a very important role to play in promoting your franchise, as well as the success and the selling point of Subway? Because before 1995, there was literally no internet, or even there is some internet, but not very many people really use it.
Yeah.
Unlike today, you have Facebook, you have YouTube, you have the websites and so forth.
Oh, I know.
And do you see that the digital world and beyond, as well as 3D, do you think that Subway is also taking advantage of those devices?
Yeah. I just, your comment about 1995, just imagine running this business without being able to email headquarters and getting a response the next day. It was being on the phone every night trying to get things done was incredibly challenging. Social networking for us is very important, and its role is changing, and as things change, we're learning how to adapt it, how to make sure that we use it properly, and that we can make take most advantage of it as well, so that we can communicate what's important to us, to our customers, and to our potential customers as well. It's still a bit confusing for me in particular. Fortunately, I'm not the big marketing person anymore, which is good for the brand, because some of our countries have like Facebook sites. I don't think very many have Twitter. Some have applications. Most We still have countries that don't have websites yet. So we're really not ahead of the ball as far as social networking goes. And we're now